Well, healthcare is an industry that will always see demand, especially with the rise of chronic illnesses and diseases. The sector has grown to become the world's largest industry and said to be bigger than banking. But is the sector still a great investment choice? In studio now, I'm joined by Finweek Editor Jana Marais to discuss the outlook for the healthcare sector overall. Good to have you with us, Jana. Maybe if you could walk us through some of the significant structural changes that we're seeing in the healthcare sector at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's two really main things that's driving or will influence the outlook for the sector. The one is demographics. We see a lot of people becoming much older and a lot of people becoming much richer. And of course, healthcare is always going to be one of those basic needs. So the more money people have, the more they will obviously spend on healthcare. And then we see, you know, in addition to having money to spend on healthcare, is also you see a rise in these diseases of prosperity, as they call them, things like diabetes and so on. So yes, in terms of demand, I don't think healthcare companies is going to have a problem in terms of the demand side of things. I think the other big change is technology. So if you're an existing Aspen or Netcare, you know, how is technology going to change your industry? And there's going to be new competition coming from all corners. So I think those are the things that those companies will be paying attention to.
For an investor, there's a lot of things to consider here. What builds up the investment case for an investor before putting their money into these healthcare stocks?
Look, I think if you look at the South African market, for example, there's been amazing success stories. I mean, Aspen is one of them, and that's the biggest healthcare company we have listed here. And it's amazing to see how they've taken this basically reverse listing in 1998 and built us into a really global company. I think regulatory risk is a huge issue. And then things, you know, if you're in pharmacare, you need to get those new medicines out, and that can be very expensive. And then you have companies, I think there's a relatively upstart in Silicon Valley that have just completely changed the way you can test blood. So if you were a blood tester as a business, you know, all of a sudden your business model is in trouble because you need to. So there's these innovations that you need to keep up with.
So keeping up with the trends, innovations as well. You touched on regulatory, and maybe this links in two ways, where we're seeing a lot of these companies, you mentioned Aspen, seeking a lot of offshore exposure, and more importantly in developed markets. But from a local perspective, NHI and other regulatory threats?
Yes, I think that's kind of priced into the shares to a large extent. Though actually I had a very interesting chat with somebody at Griffin Asset Managers who feel that, I mean, our stocks are trading at quite expensive levels, and he feels the regulatory risk is probably not priced in adequately at the moment. So if you are an investor looking at the sector, you have to take into account price. Maybe for hospital groups, I mean, there will always be this pressure on containing costs, right? I mean, government's jobs are to make sure that as many people as possible can get access to quality healthcare. So there will always be regulatory risk. In South Africa, the NHI, personally, I think it's a good thing if it can improve the quality of healthcare for more people. But there will always be that uncertainty. I think it's a long-term issue. I don't think we'll see massive change on that front in the coming years. So, but certainly something you'll have to keep your eye on.
So the outlook not looking too positive, lots of challenges, no doubt.
No, absolutely.
Jana, thanks so much. That was Finweek's editor, Jana Marais.